In the news this week, Westminster revives plans to ban conversion therapy in England and Wales. The Scotland Secretary blocks Holyrood's controversial gender self-ID bill. And Church of England bishops express their support for blessing same-sex partnerships. Hello. The Westminster government has announced its proposals for banning so-called conversion therapy in England and Wales. A draft bill is due to be published later this year, but the government announced the ban will also apply to those struggling with gender confusion. It comes just days after an amendment was tabled to the online safety bill, branding content as harmful which advertises or promotes the practice of so-called conversion practices of LGBTQ+ people. The amendment was later withdrawn. In a letter to MPs, Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch pledged to ensure the ban would not criminalise the freedom to express the teachings of any religion, as well as everyday religious practice. The Institute's Simon Calvert gave his reaction.
Well, we're grateful, of course, that the Minister recognises some of the concerns that we've got about this legislation. But we've got a long process to go through as Parliament considers this bill, and we need all MPs and peers to understand these risks. And what we've made very clear in the media this week is that if Parliament gets this wrong, if they pass legislation which does trample on freedom of speech and freedom of religion, we are prepared to go to court to protect the ability of parents and pastors to calmly explain their ethical beliefs without being prosecuted as if they were abusers.
The Scotland Secretary has announced the UK government's decision to block Holyrood's gender self-ID bill. Alistair Jack exercised powers under the Scotland Act to veto the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, which would have allowed 16-year-olds to change their legal sex by self-declaration in just 6 months and without a medical diagnosis. In a letter to Nicola Sturgeon, Mr Jack said the bill risked creating significant complications from having 2 different gender recognition regimes in the UK, including allowing more fraudulent bad faith applications. The First Minister accused Westminster of a full frontal attack on Holyrood and said the Scottish Government would defend the legislation. However, former Supreme Court Justice Lord Hope of Craighead said any appeal stood a very low chance of success.
Then the question is, was the Secretary of State acting reasonably in deciding to make the order? And when you look at the reasoning in the document, it's very difficult to see how a court could come to a conclusion to the contrary effect. And that makes me think that actually to go to court and argue it through the various layers of court is a mistake. It seems to me risking a lot of time, because it'll take a lot of time to go through all the layers of court until you get to the Supreme Court, and also question as to whether it's a sensible use of public money.
In a debate in the House of Commons, Christian MP Miriam Cates said the legislation did not create sufficient safeguards to protect women and children from predatory men.
We shouldn't be asking how easy is it for someone who's uncomfortable with their sex to obtain a GRC. We should be asking how easy is it for a predator to get access to children. And I'm afraid this bill would make it vastly easier for a predator to get access to children, to change their sex, to change their gender, with an eye to exploiting loopholes of accessing children and women in particular.
Church of England bishops have expressed their support for blessing same-sex partnerships. Same-sex couples will still not be allowed to marry in COV churches, but prayers of dedication, thanksgiving, and for God's blessing may be offered for people who have been through a same-sex civil ceremony. Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, claimed the plans marked an important milestone for Anglicans and expressed his hope that the prayers would provide a way for us all to celebrate and affirm same-sex relationships. Responding to the news, Reverend Dr. Ian Paul, a member of the Church of England Evangelical Council, said the proposals had muddied the waters on the Church's teaching on marriage.
I think my main reaction to it is one of astonishment, really, and of being completely baffled. One of the questions is which direction is the Church leading in, but the report, in one sense, doesn't really answer that. On the one hand, it says that the doctrine of marriage hasn't changed. On the other hand, it then proposes a whole raft of things which completely contradict the Church's doctrine of marriage. So it talks about marriage being between one man and one woman, and then talks about blessing same-sex relationships. It talks about the doctrine of the Church, and then it immediately talks about diversity of views. So It appears as though the document is very happy to be completely incoherent, to suggest that subscribing to the doctrine of the church in this area is optional. It suggests that the future guidance for clergy will be they can do what they like in terms of either using them if prayers are offered or not using them. And it even hints that the discipline for clergy themselves might be entirely optional.
And finally, a UK-wide survey has revealed that almost 70% of parents believe RE to be a key aspect of their child's education. Of the 2,000 parents with school-aged children surveyed by Savanta Comres, 2/3 said what their child learns in RE lessons is important, while only 15% disagreed. State schools in England are required to teach religious education, which in most cases must major on Christianity. The report found that parents who appreciated RE praised its ability to teach values of respect and acceptance, and positively impact the morality and values of children. Well, that's all for this week. For regular updates and information on all of our stories, plus much more, visit our website at christian.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.